everyone, welcome in or welcome back. Today I have one single hanging card to share with you guys, and this is the Black Goat from Nyssa Surreal Nightmares. Now, I did originally have more dolls to open from the series, but some of them are part of group splits, some of them are trapped in transit, so today I just have the hanging card. I figured it would still be fun to open her up in the spirit of Halloween, even if I don't have the rest, and this will serve as a nice little introduction to the line. So these dolls come from the brand Toys, which have previously released a couple dolls before, including the 1/12 scale Nagis. So they're quite a departure from the styles that they've already previously established, as they also had the honey line underneath their name. Quite a stark difference in aesthetics, but I think that's what made it particularly intriguing. The other significant difference between this line and their new one is that these ones are BJDs, whereas the Nagis are MJDs. The honeys, I believe, were also BJD, but a totally different scale and proportion of doll. So I'm looking forward to seeing how their attempt at this scale ends up being. Typically, these bonus dolls are called hanging cards because they have clear packaging with a window that also has a little hole that they can hang off of displays. This one is in a more standard box. There is the art card, and it's quite beautiful, I have to say. The art associated with Toys is always very, very pretty. There's also the little instruction book with silence on the front. It just goes over all of our parts. So we'll go ahead and start by looking at the base doll and what she includes before going on to the outfit packet. So as far as bonus hands go, we have a little pair of finger hearts and then sort of a loosely closed hand. So starting with her hair is parted 3/4 across her head into this swooped bang and these face framing curls, with the right side being longer than the left. The rest of her hair is let down into this very detailed and beautiful curly-haired sculpt. The hair is a pretty stark white at the top and then gradually fades into a lighter soft gray at the bottoms. So one thing that is kind of ubiquitous to Toys' brand, at least in my opinion, is their unique soft touch coating that is typically on the hair of their dolls. And this is found on the Nagis, I believe, from season 2 and onward. I could be wrong. And I was very curious if the Nyssas would have it too, but it appears that they do. Now, the soft touch coating is kind of hard to describe, but it just feels very velvety and it's very pleasant on the hands. Just for some comparison, to the best of my ability, this is a Tina from Simon Toys, which does not have soft touch coating. And if I had to describe the differences, this is a much denser, harder piece of plastic, whereas the Nyssa and Toys hair tends to feel a lot lighter. It's like much smoother. And in that regard, I always feel like Toys dolls make a very nice little desk buddy and kind of a nice fidget. They're nice to hold. As I'm kind of holding all of the dolls in my hand as well, the Nyssas also feel a lot lighter, though that probably has to do with the fact that these guys are MJDs, so their parts are not hollowed out for the stringing. Now to continue covering the doll. She has these small, sort of blob upturned eyebrows. Her facial features are drawn mostly in black and red, so her eyelashes are thick and graphic, with red kind of fading onto the outer and inner corners of them. She has somewhat of a slight eye bag underneath, but it's more of like almost like a crying style of eye bag as opposed to like a tired eye bag. I think because of the redness, that's sort of the feeling that it gives me. It gives it more of a puffy look as opposed to tiredness. She has a small little frown and then 2 dots underneath her left eye, one larger, one smaller, and then one beauty mark towards the right side of her mouth. Adding to that sort of puffiness, there is a lot of rosier toned blushing right underneath her eyes and on the tips of her ears. I believe just ever so slightly on her nose as well. Now, I opt to leave this aspect to talk about till last because I think that there is some interesting conversations to be had about it. So right in the center of her forehead is a hexagram or a 6-pointed star, or also well associated as the Star of David. From what I could tell, in some circles, it is also associated with conjuring of spirits as talismans in sort of occult circles, and I believe that is probably the inspiration of what is being used here. However, and this extends to dolls that also have crosses and such, I just opt to mention it this time. I understand how having these sorts of symbols used this way can feel kind of trivializing to symbols that hold a lot of meaning to people. Having it so casually, like right in the middle of her forehead, might feel, in some ways, a little bit uncomfortable for people. And to which I say, if you do love every other aspect of her design, there are some alternatives that you can take. Nyssa does have an alternative painted faceplate that was released alongside crowdfunding, and Cherry Goods does have some of those in stock. I believe Cherry Goods also still has some blank faces in stock. Of course, you can always switch out the face with a different doll from the line as well. Unfortunately, if you do like the way this faceplate looks, but just want to remove the symbol, Nyssa's faceplates do have soft touch coating on them as well. And so if you were to take some acetone or nail polish remover to try and remove that part, you are going to be affecting the coating on top as well. And I don't have experience with how it removes, so I can't say if it's going to peel or pill or do something weird. But those are some of the options that are out there for you. Typically, I don't comment when designs include crosses and such because, to be quite frank, it never really crossed my mind to mention it before when dolls have had crosses and such, besides sometimes mentioning that those aspects can be uncomfortable for people. For me, I think there's a little bit of a separation in dolls that have taken inspiration from crosses and what those religious symbols actually mean. So it never really occurred to me, besides I think probably having commented on the potential discomfort of those symbols being included before. However, what really makes this noteworthy to me is the black goat theming, the general theming of this line, the fact that the symbol is like printed right onto the middle of her forehead. I felt like it was probably worth saying at least something, so that if this is something that is uncomfortable to you, that you know you have options to perhaps tweak the doll to be more to your liking. Hopefully I said that with enough eloquence. But basically my whole point in bringing up that conversation is to remind that these dolls are ultimately there to bond with you. And if that means changing their face, changing their clothes, getting rid of those things that, sort of spark those discomfort in your personal relationship, or maybe you just don't feel comfortable having religious symbols on your everyday items as a whole, then it's totally understandable. All right. So, long-winded tangent, come to a close. Let's take a look at her eye chips. As far as her eye chips go, they are black and red, with the black at the top and the red at the bottom. These eye chips are really quite glossy, so they seem to reflect light really well. I can see the faintest white highlight on the upper top of her eye, but I think it's just slightly too small for my camera to really pick up. You can kind of see it there on her right eye next to my lights reflecting in her eyes, but otherwise she has a little bar going through her eye in white to reflect a goat eye. Very cute. Now for the points of articulation, we have the neck, the shoulder, the elbows, the wrists, torso, legs, thighs, although quite stiff in the thigh area. We have the knees, and finally the feet. For some details on the body, she does have sculpting for her collarbone, her belly button, her spine and her rear. And then also fun is that they do have this little embedded ribbon that goes all along the side of her right thigh. Both on the alternative hands and her default hands, there is red that goes right to the fingertips. And this coloring is also found on her foot, though slightly fainter. Definitely gives them a little bit of that chilly look. So SciToys took a couple interesting directions with this one. Here is what the inside of the face looks like. So the eyes have this little notch on the side to help you align it, though it doesn't necessarily click straight in there. And then those two dots connect to this eye plate, which help keep the eyes in place. That eye plate is entirely connected to our neck card. So this whole section is one piece, and it does reflect the style that is also used on the Noggies, but adapted for a BJD. Now there are aspects of this head mechanism that I like and don't like. For one, it does keep the eyes very flush to the face. On the other hand, I think if you're looking for custom eyes, finding them this flat that will be able to fit into this area without sanding it down might be a little bit more tricky as far as customizing goes. I think I would have also liked for the eyes to kind of click into place better, as sometimes when her head has been popping off the neck card, I've had to readjust. Their head has been coming off quite a bit, so I think I probably will have to putty it. So the other interesting thing that SciToys decided to do for this one is that I believe the hands are actually on something closer to an MJD mechanism. So they do have the ball joint separated, but it has a peg on it, and then on each of the hands has a gap for where that peg is going to go. My mileage with the MJD joints have varied a little bit. I've never had issues with the Nagi ones, and from what I can tell, these ones feel okay. Although they certainly do feel a little bit loose. I probably would have liked this to be held on a little bit tighter. And from what I can tell, I feel like that style of MJD hand is also limiting the wrist movement that's possible compared to a BJD hand. It does probably make dressing up the doll much easier, but if posing is a big thing for you, you may not be able to reach as much motion. But that said, the feet are just standard. Okay, so for all of the pieces of clothing that she comes with a headband, a shawl, her one-piece dress, an underskirt or a petticoat, a little pair of white socks, some fluffy black leg warmers, a little pair of underwear, and some gray shoes. Here is the headband, and it has these two ear sections that are sewed off to the side. They have a velvet lining that sort of contrasts with the fluffy everything else. On this one, it has a red button sewn to it, and almost kind of an earring, which is cute. And the fabric is quite soft. From what I can tell, it is shedding a little bit, but not horribly so. So that's good. Following that same style of fluffy fabric is her shawl, and it connects with a snap in the front. It is totally black with a folded down collar and a yellow button on the left side. The one-piece dress is much prettier than I expected. I haven't really seen it without the shawl on top, but it's actually quite pretty. The collar section has a little bit of a higher neck with two black buttons going down the middle, and then it is lined with a small detail of frills. It then leads into this gray fabric that is slightly shiny, and this part makes up the torso as well as this overskirt. And it looks like the overskirt is sewed right where the seam is. So while it's not stitched completely to the dress, it does follow the Velcro backing. Now on that gray piece is a lining of white ribbon that goes all along the edges, a red bow right in the center. Back to the main section of the dress is white fabric with a little black goat decal with a ribbon. He has little red eyes and little brown horns. He's got a little nose drawn in white. Then the dress ends off in a little section of frills as well. The sleeves are a little bit of a poofy style. The underskirt is fairly simple. It seems like it is a bit more of a shinier, thinner fabric than the main dress, but it's just a little white skirt. The socks are just a pair of short ankle socks. Same thing goes for the underwear, just a pair in white fabric. The leg warmers are in the same sort of fluffy fabric that makes up her shawl and her headband. The top section has a little bit of a black frill that goes all along the edge, and it seems that it is also sewed onto a tiny piece of elastic to go around her leg. Now her shoes are just a light gray with a little strap and a white buckle. They have a small heel, and the bottoms are white. For how dainty a lot of the aspects of their sculpt are, I'm not a huge fan of the way the shoes look, but maybe they'll look better when they're actually on her. So with all of the clothing pieces covered, we can get into dressing her. So originally I saw this doll, and to be honest, she didn't really speak to me at all, but something about her kind of grew on me, and I ended up picking her up. And as I'm seeing her parts in person, I feel like they're nicer than I expected. I have been hearing about some of the quality control issues, and I would imagine that because of the soft touch, which was partial to staining on the Nagis, that she may also be susceptible to staining in her outfit as well. Well, I hate to run into an issue already, but I think the pair of underwear may be too small for her. And even as I'm trying to roll it so that it's not bunching up on itself, it still is having a lot of trouble trying to make it past her thighs. So I think we're gonna have to forego it. Now, I personally don't really care if my dolls have underwear or not, but I know that that is something that some people prefer having. Unfortunately, these do not fit over her legs. So instead, we're just gonna jump into using the skirt. Now, I do have plenty of dolls that are sort of Christmas themed, so it's kind of fun to have some that are a little bit more alternative that match the spooky season more. I've never been much for celebrating Halloween, but my partner loves it. I quite like how the dress looks on her. I almost kind of like the way the dress looks without the shawl, but we will keep going. The socks also feel just a smidge too snug, but at the very least I can get these on. Now that the shoes are on, I must say I still kind of don't love the way they look, but Continuing on. All right, and there she is dressed up. So since we just have the one doll, I guess we'll talk about her final thoughts now. Having opened her up, I think I like her more than I expected, but in some ways I'm still disappointed in other aspects. For one, I thought the dress was quite cute. However, I feel like the shawl and these fluffy parts kind of just make her a blob. She loses a lot of that definition and detail in her outfit and design that makes her kind of elegant. Now, it's nice that you do have the option between the warmer outfit, which does look quite cozy, and the slimmer outfit, taking off all the fuzzy parts. But the hair and the shawl and the ears and the leg warmers, she kind of ends up looking like a blob. Even though there is sort of this deliberate attempt I can see to kind of break up the black using her dress, the shoes, her hair to sort of use that contrast, it doesn't really work for me. But I'm also not sure how else this could have been done in a way that I would have liked more. I think she's a very beautiful doll, but I feel like the outfit just doesn't really do her justice, or at the very least, the shawl parts just kind of eat up her design. As I'd mentioned earlier, I had not seen the dress in its entirety until I was holding it in my hands, and I much preferred all of those smaller details that kind of add to it. So the little bits of frills and sort of this silhouette that you get from the longer dress. But unfortunately, you lose a lot of that when you put her in the shawl. I do think the headband is pretty cute. I don't know, there's something about these shoes that I think it's those like bulky aspects of her design that are kind of conflicting with how beautiful and sort of elegant her hair sculpt is, with how her face up is, the dress, and I just don't love how bulky and kind of clown shoe these shoes feel. So it's kind of hard for me to say exactly what it is that I would change in terms of execution, because I do like a lot of the ideas, but I just don't love the way that it ends up looking. I do really quite like the base doll. She's very pretty. I like the hair sculpt a lot. I actually like the face up a lot more than I expected. I thought that the hexagram on her forehead was like maybe a little on the nose, but I find it a little bit less intrusive in person than in photos. So I actually don't mind the face up. I'm personally also not having too many issues as far as the stringing and the arms are going. This also could be because she is the hanging card, and sometimes I've found that hanging cards for series are either significantly worse or significantly better than the mainline dolls. So it's a little hard to judge. I've heard that other people have had issues with the shapings of the peanuts, of the stringing and whatnot. Personally, I've not really noticed any problems while I'm reviewing her at the very least. Now, on the conversation of joints, I think that these little MJD peg hands are going to ultimately be something that is fairly up to preference. If you are someone who does not really mind the limited movement and would prefer sort of accessibility with dressing them up, I think if you are someone who dresses up your dolls a lot, this one might be a nice option, as it's a pretty inintrusive way of being able to take the hands on and off. If you're someone who enjoys posing your dolls a lot, it may show some restrictions, as they don't really hold the posing very well because of that little joint in there. The execution of the joint hand, I think, is okay. I don't know if it's something that I would necessarily want to see in more doll lines, but I can see the benefits of the trade-off of posability and accessibility, or ease of use. The other thing is as I mentioned, my mileage with MJDs, particularly blind box MJDs, have kind of varied. With the Evelinas, unfortunately, I totally destroyed the pegs on some of her parts to the point where she was basically a scrap doll. However, with the Nagis, I never really had any issues, and I'm finding that here too. They're firm, but they're not difficult to pull off. They do require a little bit of force, but that also means that they stay in place decently well. In terms of things staying in place well or not well, though, her hair has been a very troublesome feature in this review, and it is constantly falling off. And even though I have putty in there and I've sort of adjusted where I've put it, it has continued to fall off. So that has also been a little bit annoying. As a whole, as someone who gravitates more towards very cutesy dolls, I was uncertain how much I would actually like these ones in person, but I think that they're a fun addition to the collection. I think that it's awesome to be able to support and show interest, that there are people who want these kinds of alternative dolls. I think I'm glad that a brand as big as Sci Toys is taking initiative to help fill that gap in the niche. So ultimately, I am quite happy with her. I think she's very cute. I think she's also going to be a pretty fun doll to dress up. I think she's just so pretty, and her hair is popping off again. But I do also think that there are aspects that could definitely be improved on if Toys ends up making either season 2 of Nyssa or just another 1/12 scale BJD in general. I do ultimately like a lot of the ideas that are presented. The face and eye plate is something that I don't love, but I don't hate. And I feel like in some ways that kind of seems to summarize my general feelings towards a lot of the ideas here. I don't hate it, but I don't love it. But as a whole, I do like it. So hopefully that serves as a decent little entry into the line of Nyssa Bizarre Nightmares. And as I get my other ones, then I'll be sure to cover those as well. But I would love to know your thoughts. I know I did cover a little bit of a unique topic regarding the symbolism that is embedded in this design. So as usual, I gotta preface, if you're going to talk about it, be respectful, be kind, and so on and so on. I believe that's everything I have to cover on the doll though, so if you guys enjoyed, please let me know, and I'll be sure to continue making more doll videos. I have so many that need to be opened. But I would love to hear if people are enjoying them, or what I can do differently. I'm trying to think about what I can do to improve these, so any feedback would be great. I will see you guys next time, whether that be in a stream or a video, and stay hydrated, and remember you're loved. Bye-bye!